The mission to reboot India envisages out-of-the-box thinking, new strategies, and a way to revive India's economy at a time when we're grappling with the end of the second wave, don't know if there's a third wave coming, and consumer sentiment is still dampened. In this special series of ours, today we're going to look at the role of a sector that is red hot. If ever there is a space where money is flowing like a tap, it is in the Indian startup space. Interestingly, Indian startups are growing at a time when Chinese startups are facing the heat from their own government's diktats. So, for an example, India has seen a record funding of $6.3 billion for startups in the second quarter. In April, while we were grappling with the worst of the second wave, at least 6 unicorns were born in just about a few days. It's a parallel universe that startups are occupying right now. You hear of billion-dollar fundings every other odd day. You hear, in fact, of startups now offering things like living in Dubai and watching, cricket matches and even BMWs to attract the top talent. So what really is going on? Why are Indian startups seeing such a boom? And the big question, can this really contribute to uplifting the economy? Are these startups reaching Bharat? Are these startups generating employment? And are these business models sustainable so we don't see another bubble like we saw with the tech bust or the dot-com boom, which then busted? To speak on some of these issues and aspects on Reboot India, I'm joined today by Ashish B. Fafadia, who's member IVCA and VC Sector Council and partner at Blume Ventures, Rituparna Chakraborty, Executive Vice President and co-founder Teamlease, on the show with us, as is Sandeep Aggarwal, founder and CEO of Droom. Welcome to all of you and great to have you on the show. Ashish, let me begin by getting your take on the theme that I've outlined in my introduction. First of all, why are Indian startups seeming to beat the trends everywhere right now? You have traditional companies which are grappling with very real repercussions of a global pandemic, a second wave, and what that has done to consumer sentiment and appetite. But startups seem to be completely immune to all of that.
I think first and foremost, what we need to do is acknowledge the fact that the digital movement in India is a 15-year-old journey as it stands today. And over the last decade and a half, we have come a long way in terms of the penetration of digital. And this is both in terms of the way we use our data and the penetration of smartphones. There has been significant movement on the formalization of the sectors and space as well. And all of these things have been happening over a decade-long journey since 2010 plus. And what we are seeing today is the fruits of a decade-plus journey. And over the last 18 months or so, since we have been in the pandemic, when you look at verticals which are consumer-centric, wherever it has been practicable and wherever it has made sense, it is digital which has really made it work. We couldn't be doing this, we couldn't imagine doing an interview like this if it was not for digital and the data rates and the infrastructure that we have seen over the last few years. So I think there has been a very meaningful contribution, whether it is education, whether it is health, whether it is fintech, rural tech, all of it combined and much more, where startups have had a significant impact. The physical economy has suffered, but not to suggest that this is what is the reality. Over a period of the next few quarters, as we see the pandemic receding, as we see vaccinations going deeper, I definitely feel that the world will be a place where both the realities coexist, the virtual reality as well as the physical reality that existed until about a few years ago. But one thing is for sure, the digital ecosystem has seen a semi-permanent surge, almost like establishing a new base. And I think from here on, it's only going to be a way further up for this ecosystem. We can talk later about what is the impact, valuations and all that. That's a separate point altogether. But fundamentally, the massive opportunity and promise.
Yeah, absolutely.
The digital world is now getting into a much bigger notice and fulfillment.
No, you make a very valid point, Ashish. The valuations is a separate context and conversation. There could be many factors for that, including the fact that there is a lot of global liquidity right now, which could be coupled with other factors. So that is a whole different ball game. But one does wonder when you see these amazing valuations coming in, now value unlocking through IPOs, etc., that is all of that interest backed by fundamentals, and where does that tie in to the economy currently? Let's take, for example, the question of employment. And let me come to you on this, Rituparna. You have data, we have data every month coming out from CMI, for example, that unemployment is growing, that we are still far away from pre-pandemic levels. You have a lot of sectors that are hurting, and of course the ones impacted by pandemic are the most obvious. And then you have this alternate universe where an engineer is in such high demand right now in the startup space that they are being wooed with every imaginable thing, whether they're gadgets or their fancy bikes or what have you may. My question to you simply, Rituparna, is how much employment is this ecosystem actually generating?
Thanks so much, Tamanna. I think of course, the entire tech and digital universe has taken off in a trajectory that has been exponentially boosted by the pandemic. It was well poised, and I think India as a country and a lot of Indian youth who have spent years killing themselves in this particular area are going to benefit from it. But I think it's beyond the tech conversation, or rather youth who are skilled in technology skill set. We have seen that in recent years, tech startups has impacted lives, not just in the area of technology, but all across. There are many tech startups who have actually enabled formalization of the workforce. I mean, we have seen what has happened in the fintech industry in recent past. I think what is happening with the new tech startup, I know that there is an emergence and resurgence of so many organizations, but I think it augurs well because we need this pipeline of startups. We know that there would be a certain percentage of failure, but it's actually leading to innovation. It's transforming the nature of jobs as well, which is benefiting the youth because India always have struggled with wage problems rather than just a job problem. I mean, that's always been my belief. And I'm seeing that with the emergence of the startup ecosystem, it's not just about the quantity of jobs. They have also been able to influence to a large extent the quality of jobs. So the youth who otherwise would have struggled without dignity of work or without some basic entitlement to wages, I'm now finding the flexibility as well as the opportunity to earn much higher than what they used to. So I think it's a brilliant move, whether it's a valuation game. Leaving that aside, it's actually bringing out a lot of youth from their apathy, the fact that they are finding themselves without a job. I'm just hoping that some of these startups will impact the Cat B, Cat C cities as well, which, I mean, some ideas seems promising and would probably impact the youth even in the hinterland. But definitely, while pandemic has its negative impact, if this trend continues, we will see more and more opportunities emerging for the youth. And it's not going to be limited just to the tech world. Like, for example, I mean, I see Sandeep on the call. I mean, his business model has the potential to not only hire technology experts, but there will be a lot of people on ground whose lives can be transformed by ideas like his. And there are many already in the pipeline. So I think it augurs well for us.
Yeah.
High time India had this resurgence.
You know, Sandeep, I'm very interested in knowing your first-hand perspective. If you look at the data coming in, consumer sentiment is dropping, the middle class has actually shrunk, incomes have been lost. So for startups which are seeing great valuations, that's a different story. What about the consumer interaction? What about the feedback that you're getting from customers? What are you seeing at the end of 2 waves of COVID-19?
Absolutely, Tamanna. First of all, please do not spoil our potential employees by telling them about Dubai and BMW. I think that part is not sustainable.
It's there. It's out there. It's out there. I didn't make that up. There's actually a company promising all of this. But yes, I get your
very
point.
hard for my retirement, but very far from settling in Hawaii with a fancy car. But anyhow, so Tamanna, absolutely, the startup, how Ashish mentioned very beautifully, it's a 15-year-old ecosystem in the building, right? I mean, US is, and also I must say that while I will have a lot of bias about the digital and the tech side, but it is of course the startup revolution in India is more than that. But just what has happened is startup by nature, they are supposed to deploy Ashish dollar in a way that each dollar of a large company, almost it goes equivalent of a $3 for a small company, right? So it's an entrepreneurial deployment of capital. Second is most of the decisions are made in 3 minutes, where people may be 3 feet away from each other, which social distancing may not allow, but just as a metaphor. And then it is always sits on a disruption or innovation, in terms of what has been done, what can be done now, which was not previously possible. I mean, that's how the startup takes birth. So if you combine all these 15 years of ecosystem, access of capital, etc., obviously it has completely changed. As a consumer internet company at Droom, what we see is a massive influx of people shifting online. When I came to India 10 years back to start Shop Clues as my first venture, that time it was not easy to even assume someone will buy a 200 rupees best-selling book online. But now people are buying cars left, right, and center. Our organic and direct traffic has gone up by 6 times. We are, our business has, in the first wave, it had come down almost to zero because India was closed down completely, where even startup could not breathe that much. But second wave, for a business wise, was almost like a blessing in disguise. Of course, in terms of human life, it was catastrophic. But business wise, we are right now running our business as if it is, it would be more like 2023, 2024 just happened three years early. So business is really shaping up very, very nicely. And, the startups, just if you allow me to add one more thing, unlike industrialized nation, right, India has very high cost of capital. Real estate is very expensive. We don't have modern large retail format type of format. Because of that, almost every category is up for grab, and it is completely giving Indian consumer what a consumer will hope in Chicago, in New York, in Paris, London, or Shanghai. So it's the first time in modern India, startups are able to give you at a parity level what a consumer is seeking.
Sandeep, the story of the startup space is amazing because of the way it has also been embraced. I mean, I can say this firsthand, even in a small village in Maharashtra, online payments have become a norm. So it has penetrated. But my question, and what I started this show with, was the point about how this is lifting, and is it lifting the real economy? So Sandeep, tell me, are you reaching out to Bharat? Are you creating those kind of jobs and opportunities for more and more people and for a wider set of people?
Right, absolutely. So, Tamanna, in the first year of Droom's existence, this year we complete 7 years. First year we were only available in NCR. Second year maybe in the top 10 cities. I'm very happy to share with you that we are available in 1105 cities. Some places, the only way someone has bought an automobile is through Droom. Lot of places, we account for 60 to 100% of the revenue made by a small mom and pop dealer who did not have deep pockets, who did not have capital, who does not have MBA, who barely know English, right, and barely have a physical resources, right? But they can make their very, very decent living because from soup to nut, everything is done by those startups. And obviously Droom is one of them. So we have seen, beyond 20, 30 cities in India, it is Bharat, right? It is Bharat. And we have presence in 1100 cities. And we see very interesting trends in terms of people buying a German car from Cathal in Haryana, right? Or someone is becoming a seller, and the only way he's running the entire household is through the income he's generating online. So clearly online payment or buying a ticket for a railway or airline were among some of the first categories. But now, right from finding a life partner to a dating partner, to buying a home, to home loan, taking admission in university, changing a job, relocation, luxury vacation, or buying an automobile, all are enabled by the startups. And how Ritma mentioned, we are absolutely creating a lot of white collar jobs. If you are engineer, if you are marketing expert, finance expert, HR, legal, but absolutely there are millions of jobs are getting created, which are on the grounds, right? I mean, the food tech alone, I'm not from food tech, but I'm guessing food tech alone probably would have created 500,000 incremental jobs, the kind of jobs which did not exist 4 years back.
Yeah. No, so the whole gig economy has gotten that spurt because of such companies where people became owners, driver partners, delivery partners, etc. My question is, Ashish, looking forward, how sustainable are these companies or many of these companies? We know that the success rate in startups is not very high. All of that funding is coming in. Many grow and then they go bust, and maybe the founders land on their feet, they reinvent themselves. But in terms of a vehicle to revive the economy, how sustainable are these businesses right now?
It's a good question, and I'll just start from where Sandeep stopped earlier. I think it's a good question to answer on what is the impact and how deep the impact is. So I think today, broadly, most of the service economy ends up sustaining on the digital infrastructure. I'm not trying to mix this up from a startup lens. All that I'm adding on to that layer is the overall infrastructure is enabling a parallel universe to exist, and the existing universe to at least sustain and hold for. So when we try and couple this with sustainability, I do feel, Tamanna, that from a sustenance point of view, going into crazy burn is definitely not sustainable at all. I'm definitely hoping that the companies that are going down the path of listing are going to fulfill promises of becoming profitable enterprises over the midterm. In the short term, we can't expect miracles. We have covered this distance over a decade and a half, and it is not way too bad from what we were looking at around 2-3 years ago when a bunch of these companies were raising pre-IPO rounds, etc. So I think broadly, I do believe very strongly that there is a fair bit of fundamental demand and case which is driving the overall interest and momentum in the startups. However, valuations are driven with the factors, many factors, including liquidity. So one can argue on whether it's the best price that people are paying at this point in time. That may or may not be sustainable. But people who are looking at this market from a long-term perspective are definitely going to have a good run ahead. Because I think the only way India can continue to grow at a 7+% or touch close to 8% and fulfill our ambitions to be a 5 trillion economy, if we are going to make sure that the growth is inclusive across the last man standing in the last village and the last corner of the country. And digital is a way to make sure that people have education. And education has its own advantages and it can take the whole family to a next level. Digital is a way where you can make sure that basic healthcare and remedies are available. And in terms of medication, etc., it's the e-commerce which sustains and gets across to various parts of the country. So I think with introductions of superior technology, with adoptions of drones, etc., we will see a significant benefits of these reach even further down to the last mile in the villages. Well, I couldn't imagine a farmer sitting in a district in rural Maharashtra or some other part of the country getting financed. Banks were suffering, there were lockdowns, there were default rates, and they were being recognized by the digital fintech startups where, because of the fact that a formalization layer had been created, they had access to bank accounts. We had understanding of GST and the rotation of the bank money flowing, we could go ahead and administer loans and there were zero defaults. So I think a new India is talking with a fresh set of value systems, and it will eventually, physical world and digital world will be there to be operating together. It is definitely hard to argue against people who are talking about valuations. When you look at cash burn and high valuations, take a look at any sector, retail, insurance, and a bunch of other places where physical businesses have burnt money and guzzled cash for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And here we are trying to compare it and say startups are burning money. Yes, they are. And at the same time, we're definitely needing to be more responsible and focus on profitable businesses once you are past the $200, $300, $500 million mark. Else it is not sustainable.
Yeah, because for the simple reason that you need to sustain as well. Rituparna, coming back to the basic theme of the startup story as a method to actually revive the economy, what do we need to now see for sustainability and for wider involvement in terms of economic growth?
So I think I often use this voting machine versus the weighing machine analogy, which means that the exuberance around the startup ecosystem does enjoy initially the impact of standing on a voting machine. However, in the long run, we all know that the weighing machine is what essentially where the rubber meets the grass. So of course, the number of startups which are coming in, we probably know that given the mortality rate of organizations, there is going to be a certain percentage of them who will survive and will grow in the long run. But then that cannot be a case against the resurgence. As a matter of fact, in spite of the possibility that some startups may not sustain in the long run, I think India deserves to go through this phenomena, because while the global majors of the Facebooks and the Googles have been powered by Indian engineers, I think India still have not been able to create organizations of that stature. But I think at the moment, I feel that we have a shot at being able to create. So in spite of there being a challenge in terms of sustainability, I think this momentum should not stop. Now, I think the impact of all of this on employment. For example, I feel employment already with today's youth have reached a taxi cab relationship, which means that especially amongst youngsters, the average tenure in a job, when they're entering the job market or between 0 to 3 years, is about 12 months. And if, let's say, they are able to get themselves associated with a startup ecosystem, in spite of, I know in the long run, sustainability is important, but from an employment perspective, if they're gaining valuable experience doing a job and they're also able to enjoy a certain wage premium, which they may not have enjoyed if they stuck to an informal sector job, and that, of course, improves the purchasing power capacity of a wider range of our youth today. And that all plows back into the economy as a positive trend. So the way I'm looking at it is that, look, when the e-commerce resurgence happened, there were many organizations in that space. And we had delivery agents and boys, just to give you an example, deployed across all of them, right? And we've seen a set of consolidation that has happened, but I'm yet to find a delivery boy who's being unemployed thereon. I mean, they have actually moved on to working for larger organizations, maybe more stable organizations. But I think that's how they are starting their course.
Absolutely. I get the point. I mean, there possibly jobs that will be created that we haven't thought of yet, which will give opportunities that we haven't thought of yet. So in the larger picture, startups are definitely contributing to new ways of economic recovery that we couldn't have imagined a few years ago. One can only hope that these great companies that are raking in the moolah today keep their eye on the ball, which also includes a sustainable, profitable business model. Thank you to all of you for joining us on this special episode of Reboot India.
Thanks,
Thank you.